Hi guys, I'm gonna make one more video. It's one of those days. I am a conscientious person, and I want to try to be appropriate, and certainly under these kind of conditions, it's very stressful. I haven't got enough sleep. I haven't been out of here in 7 months, other than to get groceries. It's very disempowering and dehumanizing. But what I want to touch base on is there's other kids involved in this. Certainly, as I was growing up, a lot of these things were normalized. I was lectured at various points. The Jehovah Witnesses, my godmother and her husband, who is inappropriate, are involved with other kids. Three cousins that we used to go to visit them. Me, my cousin, and my godmother's daughter by another relationship. So there's stories all surrounding that relationship. And then of course there's stories with my mother's boyfriends who periodically show up and make allegations now with one of my niece's little sons, Bentley, which I'm speaking out for because I got my breakfast here in case you're wondering. So these men will show up and make allegations about me, but this is the kind of inappropriate things that go on. And certainly I was not allowed to see these children, but my mother thinks it's funny to bring these kids over to my cousins, the heroin addict, over to his Uncle Bud's. Their Uncle Bud. I got lectures from Holly over that he's their grandfather. And she had no problem leaving her daughter with my godmother and supposedly this man, Tony, who's been inappropriate. There's been stories from his own half daughter who was speaking out at one point, but then she goes back into being a Jehovah Witness. So you go in and out with these people because they shun you or they excommunicate you one minute, and then the next minute you're back into the fold and they start attacking people surrounding you if you happen to support that person. And again, with my neighbors up on the lake, his grandsons next door, this Jimmy, drunk all the time, abusing his little grandsons. The last time I was up there, they were visibly upset. They were starting to get a little older and the appropriateness had continued. So oftentimes, when kids are really little, we allow for certain things. But this woman, his wife, Pat, was repeatedly bullying and abusive, started in how I was crazy as soon as I bought the property with my ex-husband from his aunt. I mentioned the other people on the other side. He works for cops. So they allowed this to go on, getting drunk, sitting on the deck while I was in cooking dinner, and these two little boys were being bathed down on the beach. So as they got older, it got inappropriate. And there was other things with the trailer park, all these kid-friendly parties and so on and so forth. So I won't use this video to do that. But then there's another member of the family, Christina, which I went down to the police station and reported about her too, because she was adopted by my ex-husband's cousin, and he thought it was funny to come up and stir up trouble and talk about, the sex abuse scandal at the end of my marriage. So these men continue to think this is funny, and I'm trying to put things in chronological order because it's very difficult. Certainly I was in shock for a long period of time after they sexually assaulted me again, arrested me, made up a bunch of stuff. So it's taken a while to go through things, and I apologize. Sometimes things come out, in different ways, and I don't mean to do that. And I would like to be more sensitive and talk about these things, but they're not affording me to do that. Being thrown around the city and having to go through painful memories of the past, nobody should have to do that in the midst of a divorce, but that's just exactly what they were doing to me. And then showing up, all these people making threats and allegations because this has gone on so long. And certainly victims, certainly in the generation I grew up with, excuse me, some of this was allowed, just like with this police officer's grampy. He's at the gym being inappropriate. The man's 90 years old. Instead of other men saying, look, this is inappropriate. This is not how we treat women. You're allowed to go to the gym. You're allowed to have a car and own property. And you shouldn't have to go to the gym and have a bunch of men sitting around snickering and making crude remarks. And certainly this man, his grandson is a police chief now, or deputy police chief. Certainly you got to do the tough stuff. Look at grandpa. We don't act like that anymore. Certainly if not towards me at the gym, certainly for his own grandson. The man was 90 years old. I was respectful at 5 years old when I used to play with his daughters. And certainly, here I was, a 55-year-old woman going through the divorce. going to the gym and having this man still be inappropriate. You know, making crude jokes when I came out of the locker room, and I was still respectful. But, you know, I'm tired of being respectful because this stuff keeps going and keeps going and keeps going. So there's other children. I touched base on a couple other kids. I certainly am concerned about my little nephew up there because when this stuff is normalized, people don't question it. And certainly, there's another little boy, my cousin's son, Justin. You know, he needs to be protected too. He lived over there with Holly, who continues with the dick pics and her threats and her allegations up to the T-ball park and so on and so forth. And other kids need to have a voice because they don't. Because when people are allowed to continue this and normalize it, it goes on. And then years later, you think, yeah, gee, that was inappropriate. When I was inside cooking dinner, when I'd come up from the beach, this little show went on with these two little boys being bathed. So that's just one example. There's others. Certainly bath time was a funny thing when my mother's boyfriend was inappropriate and so on and so forth. I won't get too far into that. But certainly with little Christina, I hope she's doing well, Chrissy, because I will continue to talk about what you thought was funny when I was trying to get a divorce with my ex-husband, making this stuff up, and that was reported. Again, bath time, which I didn't do anything wrong, but they were going to try to set something up to normalize this and so on and so forth. So I really want to get that out there, that I'm not the only one, and certainly other people have stories up there at my lake house and also in the neighborhood with different things that were inappropriate. Be safe, guys.